All right, good evening. How's everybody doing? Tonight's show is not actually a scheduled episode or part of the series of episodes. In reading and investigating, being curious, I've come to some scary, I would say conclusions, but I'll say scary possibilities about the future. Our president-elect... Oh, by the way, my name is James Hayden. This is the Crusader Radio Show. We are put on by the Civis Gravis Society, which is civisgravis.org. Last time I said .com. No, it's civisgravis.org. civisgravis.org. Anyways, as I was saying, it's becoming apparent that our president-elect, his son, Hunter, amazing name to give that child, has too many Chinese connections. He's received a lot of money from the Chinese. And nobody knows how much is legal or illegal. I don't even think our IRS really knows or gets it. I don't think the U.S. IRS may even be aware of all the funds that he gets. But that's purely my own speculation. Obviously, we're going to be in bed with China very soon. China's going to be pulling the butt strings on old President-elect Biden. Now, this episode I'm calling the Chinese Rhinoceros. And where do we start? What is the Chinese Rhinoceros? We're going to discuss who was Mao and why is China so evil. The Chinese Rhinoceros is my latest pseudo-term for China and its global agenda. It is the represented image of China being so large and monolithic that it tramples not only their enemies, but their allies as well. A giant smelly beast you cannot escape. How did China become a megalithic powerhouse? With such a blatant disregard for humanity? Well, as all great villains, they started out as the underdog. A poor, poor nation that was being pillaged and used to feed the then Japanese Empire. If you go back to 1900 through 1945, in 1900, China was declining from the previous century's success, but the war with the Brits really defeated them. It caused them a huge amount of financial upheaval. They lost lots of troop population, money, resources, so on. 1900 through 1945, China was a very underprivileged third world country. They were truly the meek being victimized by Japan, the Japanese empire of that era, not the Japan of today. So let's start. The person who brought China out of its oppression, or is supposed to have done this, its oppression from Japan, its oppression from World War II, generally bringing a sense of humanity to the Chinese, is Mao Zedong, otherwise known as Chairman Mao. In 1949, he became the leader of China and gave birth to the new People's Republic of China. He was a fundamental communist, socialist, ever looking up to Karl Marx, Vladimir Lenin, Joe Stalin, and Leon Trotsky. And if you're not aware, those are all authors, leaders, and engineers of communistic socialism. He was in love with the romance of justice that the forefathers of communism whispered in his ear. The problem being is he was so brutalized and desensitized by war, he could not possibly rule with any wisdom or kindness, or with a wise kindness. Mao was an evil man to whom the Soviet Union had placed into power. And I have to say, too, it wasn't just the Soviet Union that placed him into power. He had some help from the Roosevelts, from some things that I'm reading. I'm going to study more into that. That might be a whole other show, how American liberals helped put Mao into power. But nonetheless, born from the insanity of a corrupt desire, the People's Republic of China rears its head in 1949. Of course, it's very paranoid. The people are very angry and determined to be so powerful that no one can harm them again. And though it took many decades, that's exactly what the People's Republic of China did. To the point, they are now a world financial power whom possesses nuclear arms and aircraft carriers. But the paranoia and cruelty of the earlier 19th century still persists in their hearts. They use this fear to rationalize inhumane treatment in our own modern era. So let's look at the birth history of the People's Republic of China. Within the first 16 years of their life, meaning the People's Republic of China as a country, there were a total of 9 massacres, major massacres. There were smaller ones, many more. But we're going to say a total of 9 major massacres and human hunting events. We start off in 1949 through 1953. Mao comes up with what's called the Chinese Land the Chinese Land Reform. He liquidizes all landlords in what they call a struggle session to terminate the landlord class. It resulted in 4,700,000 deaths. 1950 to 1953, the Great Suppression. Now, this was personally led by Mao. It involved the liquidation of all counter-revolutionaries, a total of 712,000 deaths. 1951 through 1952 were a combination of the 3 anti and 5 anti campaigns. Exact death toll is unknown. The only death toll that they have from one of many cities is that it was an average of 876 people that were murdered in Shanghai. If you average that for the other cities and communities, it probably works out somewhere between 10,000 and 20,000 deaths. 1955 through 1957, you have the Sufan movement, another campaign led by Mao, 53,000 deaths. 1957 through 59 campaign is the Anti-Rightist Campaign. And yes, anti-rightist means they murdered all the Chinese Republicans and all the conservative, politically believing Chinese. That resulted in 550,000 deaths. In 1958, there was the Zunha incident, 435 deaths. Not bad for the previous history. 59 was the Tibetan uprising, 87,000 deaths. 59 through 61 was the Great Chinese Famine. Now, when they had their famine, all the countries of the world offered to give food and money and help China. They refused. 2,500,000 people were executed so they would not starve to death. 1963 through 65, they called the Socialist Education Movement. And that resulted in 77,560 deaths. That is 8,733,871 lives over 16 years. That is 546,000 people per year. That is 45,000 people per month. And that is 1,500 people per day. Holy crap. He beat Hitler by 2 million people. And let's see, looking at the per day, I think Hitler honestly was only able to liquidate 750 people a day between his 3 or 4 camps. I mean, they outdid Hitler. That really is an evil man. And the reason I went through all of this is that this country is now eyeballing the United States. This country is now looking at us as a territory to conquer. So all in all, that is the birth of China. Millions of souls on the hands of their own people. Millions of people caught in the tragedy of dead loved ones. How could people whom were so abused by Japan commit the same sins against their own flesh and blood? I wish someone could explain that and tell me that. Usually, or what I thought was the ideal, was we learn from our mistakes and the abuses that we suffer. And I guess not all people adhere to that. In that time, China caused the deaths of thousands of Americans by starting the Korean and Vietnamese wars. Numerous issues of its citizens starving to death, freezing to death, cannibalism. The families never had to happen. Excuse me, my misreading my own script I wrote. The famines never had to happen. America, Europe, and even Japan offered to help them. To this day, it is my belief that they still work people to death. Many people working in factories in China die right where they stand on an assembly line. This is my first in many episodes on modern-day China. I wanted to familiarize my audience with its birth because its influence on our country is going to be heavy due to our new president-elect. In my opinion, as of January 20th, 2021, Inauguration Day, China will no longer have any fear of the USA. China only respects what it fears. Without respect from China, we are just another piece of real estate to conquer. Mao had recently said, in order to become the center of the world, they must first become the center of the United States of America. That should tell you exactly their intentions and exactly how stupid President-elect Joe Biden is in thinking he's going to make deals that leave them to the advantage. This evil empire has infected us like a virus. It feeds off us like a huge parasitic worm. Julius Caesar screamed, "Delenda est parasitius," as the liberal senators stabbed him to death on the steps of their Senate. "Destroy the parasites," he was screaming. In my words, beware the parasites, and beware the People's Republic of China. I am James Hayden, and that's what I have to say on the topic of China. We have moved into deep, dark water. This is not going to end well. With Joe Biden's plan, he's going to cut our manufacturing in-house because of the tax increases he's going to put on the corporations. They are then going to hire out again to China and India and the other countries that provide extremely cheap labor. And this extremely cheap labor is provided on the backs of peasants. You want to complain about the United States minimum wage? You should see how the average factory workers in China live. Oh, they show you a picture of a nice, bright, shiny city. Looks like they're living on the edge of a marvel. They're not. They have 1.3 billion people, and only 150 million of them are able to live even as upper poverty of the United States. The rest live in a shithole. Now, I hope everybody listening will go out there, do a little research, do a little reading. If you take a look, there's a lot of authors that have come here from China, and they don't have good things to say. So my name is James Haddon, and as I always like to say, I'm trying to convert sheeple to people, and may God bless you one and all with wisdom on your darkest days.